Hey guys, we're gonna continue writing exponential equations from tables and graphs. Things are gonna get just a little bit more complicated when you see an example like this. Just tells you write an equation that models the exponential pattern in this table right here. There's two problems, two things that are different from this versus what you just saw in the last lesson. Those two problems are that there's no y-intercept. How do I know that? None of those points is where x is 0. That's where the y-intercept is, right? That's where the y-axis is when x is 0, so I don't have it. So I don't know what a is. I can't just start out by saying this one's a because it doesn't say. And then x's step is more than 1. So before you were saying like, okay, from 2 to 3 to 4, if I look at this, we're multiplying by something to get to the next one. Well, it's not just one multiply, right? It's not from 2 to 3. So I didn't just multiply one time. So that's going to complicate things just a little bit, but we're going to look at how we can attack it. This is one of two strategies. The other strategy is to use the substitution method. There's going to be videos on that after this. I just wanted to show you this idea of how to work through it first. So the first thing you can do is try to find b. So how do we find b? We do it kind of like how we just did in the last one, where we can say I got from 32 to 1 by multiplying by something, right? If I start with 32 and get to 1, so I start with 32 and I multiplied by b to get to 1. Okay, that looks exactly like what we did last time. Well, what's the problem? I didn't multiply one time. This goes from -3 to 2. So how many times did I actually multiply by b? I actually multiplied by b. Let's see if I'm at -3, -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. I multiplied 5 times, right? 5 times. So how do I say I multiply by this 5 times? That's an exponent. So this is saying if I start with 32, multiply by b 5 times, I should be at 1. That's what that's what the table says, right? If I was at -3 and then I was 32, now I'm at 2 and I got to 1, I must have multiplied 5 times to get from 32 to 1. That's all that's saying. So then you have to solve this. You have to solve this by using your inverse operations to unwrap b, right? So we're looking at 32 times b to the 5th equals 1. So it's 32 times b to the 5th. This is multiplication. The inverse of that is division. So I can divide by 32 on both sides. That makes this 1. So 1 times b to the 5th is just b to the 5th. B to the 5th equals 1/32. Now, we have an exponent. What's the inverse of an exponent? That's taking the root. So what we're going to do is just take the 5th root. Take the 5th root, you make the little radical, and then the index is going to be 5. This number here, saying the 5th root. Okay, so the 5th root of the 5th exponent, those are inverses. I know that that's just going to be b because they're inverses. They cancel each other out, right? So then I need to know what the 5th root of 32 is. So if you have a nice calculator, that's great. If you need to use Desmos's calculator, that's fine too. Just go in here, Desmos. You can Google Desmos scientific calculator and just click here. See this nth root here? Boom. You see how it does that, where it gives me the radical, and I can say 5th root. Don't put the 5 out front. That's not what we want. We want it up here in the index. So the 5th root of 1 backslash 32nd. So 5th root of 1/32, that's 0.5 or 1/2, right? So 1/2. Okay, so b is 1/2. Perfect, b is 1/2. That means if the equation y equals a times b to the x, I know that y equals a times 1/2 to the x. Sweet. Well, now I need to find a, because that's the other thing. I need to find a and b. That's my whole goal, right? So, I'm going to find a. So find b by just setting it up. You You just set it up. Say I got from 32 to 1 by multiplying by b 5 times. Okay. Now I need to find a. So I know that y equals a times 1/2 to the x, and I'm searching for a. I can look at x and y. I know a bunch of x and y's right here. And I can just take any of them and plug them in as long as they're a pair, right? Any of these pairs can go in for x and y. I'm going to take 1 and 2 because it looks like the easiest of the numbers, right? -3, 32 might be fine too, but these guys are definitely, I'm not going to choose those. I'll choose 2, 2 and 1. So that means, the point, the xy point, 2, 1, right? Where x is 2 and y is 1. So let's just plug those in. Y is now 1 times a to the 1/2, and x is now 2. Just plugged in x and y. So all I got to do is solve here now. So 1 equals a times 1/2 squared. 1/2 squared is 1/2 times 1/2. Multiply straight across, right? Multiply straight across, so that's 1/4. Okay, times 1/4. A times 1/4. Again, we can multiply straight across, so that's a over 4, right? If we think of this as a over 1, a over 4, when we multiply that. Okay, well, we know what to do there. If we're solving, a divided by 4, the inverse of dividing by 4 is multiplying by 4, and a is 4. Okay, well, now I have a and b, and I can write the actual equation. Y equals 4 times 1/2 to the x. That's the equation. Final answer. Boom. Okay, I found b by setting it up by saying I've got from 32 to 1 by multiplying by b 5 times. Solve for b. Once I plugged in b, I can find a by taking an xy from the table, plugging it in, and solving. All right, let's try one more. This one's from a graph, but same thing. We got 2 points. I don't know what the y-intercept is here. It's not clear on the graph. But I do know these 2 points. It's not clear what the one step is either, so we're just going to take those 2 points. So we've got the points 1, 6 and 448. Okay, so again, we're going from 6 to 48, right? So I took 6 and I multiplied by b to get to 48. Well, how many times did I multiply by b? This is at 1, and then 2, 3, 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4, that's 3 times. So I multiplied by b 3 times to get to 48. That's all it's saying. Take 6, multiply by whatever the number is 3 times to get to 48. I know that because it took 1, 2, 3 steps, right? From 1 to 4. All right, we'll solve. Divide by 6 on both sides. 3 equals 8. Okay, this is an exponent, so we'll take the third root. Well, the third root of 8 is 2, because I know 2 cubed is 8. So we have b, and then we'll find a. Let's use a different color. So y equals a times 2 to the x. So I can use either one of these guys to solve for a. So since this is an x and a y, I'll use the smaller numbers just because they tend to be easier, right? 1 and 6. All right, so that means x is 1 and 6 is y. So y is 6, 2 to the first. And see, the smaller number made it easier because 6 equals 8. 2 to the first is just 2. So 2 times a is 2a. And so since I know 2 times a, the inverse of that is dividing. So a must be 3. And there you go. Y equals 3 times 2 to the x. Boom, we found a and b. We're good to go.